This chapter is designed to show you some of your options when wanting to create simple off-the-shelf objects. By off-the-shelf, I'm referring to something that's basically pre-constructed. Any 2 or 3-dimensional figure that can easily be created by simply clicking and dragging with your mouse. This video in particular will deal with creating 3-dimensional standard primitives. A primitive being just a basic building shape like a box, sphere, or cylinder. You're probably familiar with the term primitive if you ever took a geometry class back in high school or college. Inasmuch as a primitive shape is typically very basic, that doesn't mean that it doesn't serve a very important purpose, as those simple shapes can be combined together to make something much more detailed. So for an example, a car axle can be constructed by simply adding a couple cylinders, a couple torus, and in our example here, an additional sphere and cone. Basic primitive shapes can also be used as a starting point to build something much more complex, by sculpting the shape of that primitive using a handful of various modeling techniques that you'll learn over the course of this Essentials title. So don't underestimate or downplay the importance of getting the most out of your primitive shapes. When you learn how to harness the power of their various controls and settings, you'll quickly begin to appreciate just how valuable they indeed are. Let's start by looking at the box. Over in the command panel on the right-hand side, we'll make sure we're in the Create category. The Geometry tab is active, and then you'll find the box command on the upper left-hand side. Click on the button, then let's right-click the top view to activate that. Start in the upper left-hand corner, click and hold your mouse down. Now drag diagonally with your mouse down to the lower right-hand corner. This basically controls the bottom or base of the box. When you're happy with that size, go ahead and let go of the left mouse, push up, and then take your attention to the front view as we can now control the height. When you like what you've got there, simply left click. Now to better position this on the screen, let's hit Z to center things up. Now on the right hand side under the parameters, we can now make some adjustments. Values can be changed in the command panel by either highlighting the number, typing in something different than pressing enter, or by using the up or down arrow, which are referred to as spinners, to the right of that value field. The spinner works by simply putting your mouse on top of it and then pushing with your mouse either up or down. If you're wanting to cancel the command before committing, you want to leave the left mouse down and simply right-click. You can also change a value by simply clicking a spinner, but I think you'll find it more valuable if you hold that spinner down and then move your mouse up and down. Let's see what the width does. It takes us in a different direction. Again, I'll right-click to cancel, and here's your height going up and down. Now we also have 3 entries for segments. These settings will control the internal lines that you'll see in the geometry, each setting going in a different direction. So we can add some length segments, some width segments, and then why don't we also add a few for height. Inasmuch as you can see those additional segments in the wireframe view, you can't in the shaded perspective view. In order to change the story, let's activate the perspective view with a right click. Then put our mouse on the name Smooth and Highlights, click on that and change it to Edged Faces. You could have also simply used the keyboard shortcut, which is the F4 command. Now if we delete this box with the intention of making another, I want you to notice that on the right-hand side the box command is still active. And you got to be careful of that, because if you now want to change away from making another box, you're going to have to go onto the screen and right-click. Sometimes you have to do that twice or 3 times, but inevitably the button will turn off. Now before we make another, let's again hit Z to center our views. I'll go back to the box command, return to the top view, and make another. The reason I did this is because I want you to notice that this box has the very same number of segments as the last box you created. And that's just the way that Max works. As long as you haven't reset to basically create a new scene, Max will remember the values you've set on each spinner. I do that just so you're not confused the next time you make something in the views. If you want to take any spinner in the program down to its lowest possible value, you'll simply put your mouse on that spinner and right-click. Check out what that does when we right-click on the length segment spinner. It takes it down to 1, which is the fewest number of segments we can have in the length direction. Let's do the same thing for the width and the height. After doing that, let's go ahead and remove the box. We'll hit Z to again center, and I now want to show you the difference between making a box and making a cube. Notice the settings are found under the creation method about halfway down on the command panel. Let's change over to cube. This time around, we'll start in the middle of the top view, hold our mouse down, and then pull away diagonally. That's all there is to it. Hit Z, And you'll notice a cube, as opposed to a box, is sized equally in each three directions. Here again, we can change the length, width, and height after making the box, and do the same with segments if needed. Now, one other feature I want to show you that actually pertains to any of the objects. I'll simply use the box to demonstrate the technique. Let's remove this one. We'll hit Z, and we'll instead create our object by using keyboard entry. Below Creation Method and above Parameters, you have a category closed right now called Keyboard Entry. Go ahead and open that up. Now we'll keep it on Cube. We'll go down to our length. We'll type in 50 and we'll hit Enter. Because the cube is sized equally in all three directions, you'll see we changed not just the length, but also the width and the height. Now go ahead and click on Create. The box is dropped in the middle of the scene, with each side of our box being 50 units in measurement. Let's go ahead and delete that, and we'll take a look at the sphere. Again, I'll be making this in the top view. We'll start in the middle of the screen, hold the mouse down, and then drag back diagonally. Now, until we let go of the left mouse button, we're controlling the original size of the sphere. When you're happy with that size, all you have to do is let go of the left mouse. Again, let's hit Z to center our views. Now, as far as the settings on the sphere, we have a radius. Again, I'll right-click to cancel. You can control the number of segments, just like you did on the box. There's also a control called hemisphere. Now watch what this does. It divides the sphere into, let's say, more of a dome shape. I'll take that back to 0. Below that, you'll find a control called Slice On. Let's activate that, and watch what this does. It now cuts the sphere into almost more like an apple or orange slice. Again, I'll zero that out to take it back to its default setting. This is probably a good time to talk a little bit more about that right-click thing, as it also comes in handy when you're still in the middle of the creation making commands. You see, if you're creating something on the screen and you've yet to commit to that current operation by letting go of the left mouse button, you can actually cancel the command by leaving the left mouse button down and right-clicking. Let's delete this one and try that a couple times. I'll hit Z to center. I'll take note the sphere command is still active, and I'll begin making this in the top view. Now again, as you begin to draw, leave the left mouse button down. In a situation where you want to cancel out of the command with the left mouse button down, simply right-click. See how that works? Again, try that a few more times. You have no idea how handy that's going to be as you get more experience inside 3ds Max. Let's continue down the left-hand side of the command panel, choosing this time cylinder. Now again, working in the top view, I'll put my mouse in the middle of the screen, hold it down, and then pull back diagonally. This controls, again, the bottom or the base for our cylinder. I'm going to make that maybe the size of a quarter. I'll then let go of the mouse, push up, and begin concentrating on the height, which I can best see in the front view. You could also be looking in the left view if you'd like. When you're happy with that dimension, go ahead and again left-click. Now we'll hit Z to center, and let's see what we have over here on the right. You can change the radius, the height segments, which are going to be your horizontal lines going up and down. You also have cap segments. Now as you adjust this, pay attention to the top view. This creates additional segments on the top and bottom of your cylinder, making it look kind of like a spider web. I'll right-click to cancel that one. And below that, you can change the number of sides. Now, if you right-click on the side spinner, again, doing so will take that value down to its lowest possible setting. You'll see that the fewest number of sides a cylinder can have is 3. We'll go ahead and crank that back up to make it a little smoother. Even though I haven't mentioned it up until now, the viewport that you make an object in determines how it originally lies in the scene. Let's do this. With the cylinder command still active, we'll activate the front view. We'll zoom out by rolling our middle wheel back, and then I'll hold the wheel down and then push the cylinder a little bit more to the upper left-hand corner. Now we'll make a cylinder in the front view, pretty much the same size as the original. Once that's set, let's go to the left-hand view. Again, we'll zoom out by rolling our wheel, and then we'll make one more cylinder over to the side of the 2 you see on the screen. Now with 3 cylinders on the screen and only one of them active, this will actually be a good opportunity to show you the true meaning of what the Z command does. Go ahead and hit that button on the keyboard. The Z shortcut is actually the hotkey for Zoom Extents Selected. So as you can see, instead of centering all three objects on the screen, it instead used only the selected object for that centering purpose. Watch the difference if you right-click to cancel out of the cylinder command, then deselect the selected sphere by clicking away, and then finally hitting Z. See the difference? With nothing selected in the scene, all of the objects are now centrally repositioned within the views. Make sure you remember how that Z thing specifically works when you're working on your own stuff. Let's make a few more things. We'll window select all these and then remove them from view. We probably ought to hit Z again to center our action. Okay, let's try the torus command. This one we're going to be making in the left-hand view. I'll activate torus, move to the left-hand view, and again start in the middle of the screen. Now the torus is a little difficult to get a handle on when you're first beginning. I'm going to recommend that you pull away to basically the size of the window, then let go, and then push back diagonally. When you're happy with the look, go ahead and click. Now you can hit Z, and you can see what you've done. So here, creating the left-hand view makes it look more like maybe a tire for a sand buggy. Watch the difference if we instead made that in the top. We'll remove this one, activate the top view, and again create another torus. Again, we'll pull away to the outside of the window, let go, and then push back in. Now look at the difference. It is indeed the same shape, but from this angle it now looks more like maybe a donut or bagel. Or how about an inner tube for that little river rafting trip? Now what do we have for settings here? We have a radius 1, which is basically the outside dimension. Radius 2, which in essence controls the size of the hole or opening. There's a setting to control the number of segments, which add lines in one direction, and then the number of sides will add additional lines in another. Now to show you the rotation and twist, let's take the sides down to the smallest available value. That'll be 3. From here we can adjust the twist amount, and you can see what this does. And then right above that rotation, and you can see the difference there. Again, I'll right-click to zero those out. Here again we have our slice on feature a little bit further down below, so we can kind of play around with that. Let's now take a look at the cone. We'll pluck this off the screen, hit Z to get ourselves centered, and then return a little farther up into our command panel. Now the cone command is going to be on the right hand side of the top, so we'll click on that. And again, why don't we make this in the top view? Now as you start in the middle and pull away, it's going to feel pretty much like the cylinder. This is going to be basically the base or the bottom for our cone. Again, why don't we make it maybe about the size of a nickel, and then let go and push up. Looking in the front view, or the left, you can now see the height. When you're happy with that, go ahead and click, and now either pull back to make the top smaller, or push away to make the top larger. I'll go ahead and click on the screen and then use my settings on the right to make my adjustments. We'll center up with Z, and then see what we can see over in our creation parameters on the right. Now, radius 1 will be the base of your cone. Radius number 2 will be the top. Now, think about this. If we wanted to make this maybe look like the nose cone to a rocket ship, we'd want to take the top down to a tip. The easiest way to do that would be to simply right-click on the radius 2 spinner. Another thing you might find useful is that you can actually copy and paste values from one field to another. To do that, let's go ahead and take the radius 1 down to radius 2. I'll highlight the radius 1 value. I'll then right-click on it, and from the dialog choose Copy. I'll now drop down to radius 2, highlight that, then right-click and say Paste. You're going to want to hit the Enter key to lock that in. Looks like the top view of the cone is a little bit big for the window, so I'll right-click to activate any of the views and then again hit Z. Let's see what else we can do on this one. I'll take the radius 2 down a little smaller before we start. You can control the height, number of segments, sides. Again, what you see as we do more of these is a lot of the settings will carry over from one object to the next. Here too you see the slice on command down at the bottom. Below cone you find geosphere, and you're probably a little confused what the difference is between sphere and geosphere. Let's compare them both on the screen at the same time. We'll delete our cone and Z up again to center our views. In the top view, I'm going to make a sphere on the left-hand side of the window, and then I'm going to make a geosphere directly to the right of that. Just on first look, it's pretty evident the difference between the two. Let's take the front view full screen. As you can see, the major difference between the sphere and geosphere is the design of their segment layout. Where the sphere creates all the segments both horizontally and vertically, the geosphere creates more of a diamond shape to those individual segments. Now you might be thinking maybe one of these is actually smoother than the other, but you can't make that assumption as both of them can have their segments changed to make them smoother or a little more choppy or blocky. The major difference is really the design of the triangular layout. Now, I gotta be honest with you, I don't use a lot of geospheres, but you might find them helpful all depending on the direction of your project. Let's reset real quick and take a look at the tube. No reason to save. Now the tube is like a cylinder with a hole in the middle of it. Let's click on the button and make one in the top view. Now when you begin to draw away diagonally, this is going to be the size of the hole. As you let go and continue to pull in the same direction, you're now determining the thickness of the wall. Now when you're happy with that, click and then push up. Here again we're controlling the height. When you're happy, you can complete the command by left clicking. Now we'll hit Z to center, and we'll take a look on the right as far as some of its settings. You've got the radius 1, which is the inside of the hole. Radius 2 controls the overall outside dimension. And you've got your height, your segments, your cap, sides, very similar again to many of the other 3D objects. Below that you'll find the pyramid. Again, I'll be using the top view to make one. And I'll simply draw it like a box, and then we'll push up. Again, hitting Z, you can see things are pretty straightforward there. Width, depth, and then height. Lastly, I'd like to look at the plane, which is very commonly used in creating walls and floors for buildings. On the screen, it really takes on the look of just a flat sheet. So we'll click on the plane command and begin making one in the top view. Draw it like you would a box, from the upper left to the lower right. Now when you let go of the mouse, that's pretty much about it. We'll Z to center, and then we'll see on the right we can change the length, width, and the number of segments going in both directions. Again, if you want to see those segments in the shaded view, activate that and hit F4. Now, in addition to straight up and down walls and floors, the plane can also be used to kind of mold or reshape into anything from the craters that you might find on the moon to maybe a valley or riverbed that you might come across while traveling across the country. One more thing I want to show you here real quick. Let's take the front view and make a small plane. And then take the perspective view full screen. Now you might have noticed that everything we've made here as far as primitives have been made in relation to that dark gray grid you see on the screen. And that'll always be the case. So making a box, making a cone, or let's say making a cylinder, all lie directly up against that grid. Now you can change the story by, before creating something, activating a button right above called Auto Grid. Now watch what this does instead. If you move your mouse on top of one of the objects, notice the red, green, and blue sticks that point away from the cursor are kind of switching or changing position. The reason being is Max is actually identifying the surface that cursor is on top of. If we brought it over to the plane for an example, now watch the sticks change as far as the directions they point. Check that out. Now, with the auto grid on, watch what happens if we create another cylinder. A new temporary grid is created, and we can now build directly off of that surface. Look at this. And you can do it on top of the box, the side of the cone, even making maybe something like a bird perch by going off the side of that other cylinder. Look at the way that works. So that's the auto grid. You're not going to be using it all the time, but it does come in handy every once in a while. And with that, that should wrap up our look at standard primitives. Now in our next video, we're going to take a look at a specialized class of primitives called extended. Let's check it out.